Those three, now is the time to ask the questions. Senator Melton.
I think I might have questions for all three, so bear with me for a second here.
If he doesn't direct it, whichever one of you wants to answer,
Okay.
You may do so.
Thank you. Well, first, Senator Raatz, I appreciate you trying to be innovative and looking for ways to support children with learning disabilities. I think both you and I have a passion for that. I think the first question I have for you probably would be, when I look at the fiscal on it, will this be an appropriations, or would this be existing funds that we currently use now?
Thank you, Senator Melton. It would actually, there's a formula in here that requires, I believe it's the state treasurer, to go to the school corporation of home rule for that student, and they get the money for the tuition from them, from the local school district that they're of legal record. So okay. Yeah, that's how it works.
And I think that's probably one of the things that concerns me. And if we took out, and this is just hypothetical in terms of this particular bill, if we took out the special education piece, because I know some states, they make it optional. It's wide open. It's not necessarily just special education.
Correct. Yeah, it's universal.
Right. Right. My concern, and I use this only as an example for my district, I have one school corporation that has 85% of the students are special needs.
Sure.
That could be a death blow in terms of a school corporation, in terms of how the dollars are allocated. If parents chose to take them out of that system and send them somewhere else. So that's one of the things that concerns me there. And I look at the other options that have kind of gradually been rolled out in the state that has contributed to a lot of some of the public schools to lose student population. Now, I know we're talking about specifically special education students, so sure. I'm very cognizant and aware of that. But I just want to kind of share my initial concern. And I look at the formula, it's a very complex layout of how it's calculated. So I just want to kind of start the conversation there and kind of share my thoughts on it.
Sure. Well, Senator Melton, you bring up the elephant in the room, obviously, and that's the concern for losing funding. The gentleman that spoke just before me mentioned, I have some numbers here. In Arizona, they had approximately 22% of the students eligible statewide. They had 3,129 that participated, ended up being less than 1%. And as well, it follows right along in Florida. They end up with less than 1% of the eligible students that actually participate in this thing. And so I don't know how long. I think Florida was the initial one, and one of these folks may know a little bit better than myself. But Arizona, I believe, started in 2011, so they're 5 years into it, and they still have 1%. And I think that's a philosophical question that we grapple with here when it comes to the education of students. Do we have a prescriptive way and that it's done, or do we allow options? And again, that's a pretty philosophical question, and not saying anything wrong with any direction that's done. We could hear a testimony of students who were served very well in the public school system with IEP or no IEP, and as well testimony, I'm certain, of students who weren't served very well. And so either way you look at it, it comes down to the money. And honestly, when it comes to the education of our children, that's not a very good conversation to have. And that's the part, I think, where you and I feel the same way. It's about the education of the children. As well, in Indiana, with the percent that we spend on per capita, I believe it's the largest per capita dollar amount in the United States. And so how the pieces of the pie get cut and how things work, that's obviously the battle that we grapple with. I will say that I know specifically in my district and have heard it directly from those involved that the voucher system actually created the public school system it helped them to get better at what they do. Just the sheer competition factor actually increased the performance and some of the other things that we the performances and school grades and all the things that we all fight with in our districts. Yes, sir. I hope that answers it as best I can. Maybe someone else may want to.
Well, I'll just share a comment, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
You may.
In terms of, I forgot who mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was Senator Zay or someone, in terms of when we looked at rolling out pre-K, and we're debating the amount, right? And when I look at this, I think it's kind of in the same vein in terms of debating the amount of the investment that will, in my opinion, pull from the public school systems. And I understand we want to provide parents with options and choices. I know that's some of the things that we're talking about. But I think as the state continues to analyze the directions we go in these new lanes in education and in new areas, I just want us to be very cautious as we move forward in terms of adding something of this caliber to the language and to the bill. So that's all I have at this time.